Seated in her Brooklyn studio, Kara Walker laughed often when recounting the process of building a performative sculpture, Catastrophe Caravan, for Prospect New Orleans. Its title incorporates the Haitian Creole word for catastrophe, and the artist's 2-year journey to make the work was a long, strange trip indeed. The piece was intended to debut with the rest of this citywide triennial for art in November, but a blow-up between the organizers and Ms. Walker, as well as the complicated and expensive nature of the piece, forced them to present it as a coda of sorts. The long-delayed installation goes on view February 23 to 25, the final weekend for Prospect Point 4, the Lotus in Spite of the Swamp. Located in Algiers Point right on the Mississippi River, the sculpture is a large pioneer-style wagon whose sides feature Ms. Walker's signature silhouettes in watercut steel, depicting violent scenes between masters and slaves in the Old South. Inside, there is a custom steam-powered calliope. A propane tank heats water in a boiler, turning it into steam, which creates sound through large locomotive-style whistles. It will play songs of black protest and celebration, the artist said, both programmed and live, at regular intervals, by the jazz pianist Jason Moran. We Shall Overcome and the Marvin Gaye hit What's Going On are both on the playlist. Ms. Walker admitted to going down several rabbit holes in an effort to make a piece that satisfied her. The self-funded fabrication cost her $250,000. She created a small, 10-inch long version and sold it to recoup some expenses. Although now she's calm, cool, and collected, she also recounted being very angry with the Prospect organizers in the fall when she got their email questioning the cost of shipping the piece from New York to New Orleans and its presentation. Fences were eventually mended, Prospect paid, and everything has been on track since the beginning of the year. She said it was a learning experience, Ms. Walker added. How far do I need to go with my work for it to do what I need it to do, and how much support do I need for that? For his part, Trevor Schoonmaker, Prospect Point 4's artistic director, said, there were headaches and heartaches going through it all. But having a great presentation at the end is magnificent. It seems like a lot of agita for a work whose own creator describes it as having an auditory element that is extremely irritating. It's so loud that Ms. Walker recommends ear protection. But it's very much in keeping with Ms. Walker's habit of using the cultural past to make a point about race and power, as she showed to great acclaim in 2014 with her 35-foot-tall Sphinx-like figure, A Subtlety, at the former Domino Sugar Factory on the Brooklyn waterfront. Silhouettes and steam calliopes, she said. I've been going backward the whole time. She added, it's similarly retrograde, gazing into obscure histories. The explanatory pamphlet that will be distributed to viewers has a playful text in which Ms. Walker refers to herself as the sideshow barker-in-chief, a phrase that riffs on President Obama's reference to Donald Trump as a carnival barker back in the days when Mr. Trump was questioning whether Mr. Obama was born outside the United States. Race is a central theme of Mr. Schoonmaker's vision for Prospect Point 4, which features 73 artists in all, and Ms. Walker's work fits right in. She's mined antebellum America for a long time, but this takes it a step further, he said. Mr. Schoonmaker and Ms. Walker have known each other for more than 20 years, having met when, in her words, he was an intern. Mr. Schoonmaker recalled that he was a lowly gallery employee and Kara was already a MacArthur winner. She is one of the youngest to win the MacArthur Fellowship, at 27. In 2016, the two visited several New Orleans sites on a scouting trip. One of them was Algiers Point, which features a historical marker that Ms. Walker said halfway commemorates the 1720s holding area for slaves where they were kept before being shipped to auction across the river. It felt like an entry point to another grand work, conceptually and physically. She heard music during that visit and wondered where it was coming from. It turned out to be a calliope on the steamboat Natchez. She started researching the instrument, which had its heyday just after the Civil War. Calliope is the mythological Greek muse of epic poetry. I started thinking about music and mind control, happy music being a way of keeping a certain level of peace, placating everyone, Ms. Walker said. The more I looked into it, the more it piqued my interest. On the internet she found Kenneth Griffard, a Michigan-based calliope specialist, who had a partly completed one, and that's when the project started to sprout. The more I talked to him, the bigger it got, Ms. Walker said. A 10-note calliope? I was like, that doesn't sound like enough notes. The final product has 38 notes, which, Mr. Griffard said, makes it one of the biggest calliopes out there. Mr. Griffard also held a testing session that Ms. Walker attended in Heston, IND, at the Heston Steam Museum. The wagon's body was fabricated in Kingston, NY, and the wheels in Letcher, SD. The journey into what she called American manufacturing at its fringiest appealed to her love of the arcane. Ms. Walker noted that she often works in inexpensive materials, like paper. I'm a little bit of a cheapskate, but I also wanted it to be done right, she said. By early 2017, Ms. Walker understood that the financial burden of fabricating the piece would be on her shoulders. But in the middle of October, just a month before the opening of Prospect fireworks started, in Mr. Schoonmaker's words, an email balking at the shipping and presentation cost, which was $90,000 in the end, was sent to Ms. Walker from a Prospect staffer. Mr. Schoonmaker declined to say who. The issue was what they were willing to do, but also a communication breakdown, Ms. Walker recalled. I just said, forget it. If we can't get it there, we can't get it there. And I'm not leaving my thing there for 4 months with no oversight. She paused. That apparently got everybody's attention. A flurry of phone calls followed, and the last weekend plan emerged. I didn't want to have to be a diva about it, Ms. Walker explained. But I made this piece to respond to this site, and without that it feels it's lacking something. Mr. Schoonmaker and Ms. Walker don't agree on exactly what happened. He said he followed up within a half hour of the original email to say that the money was there, but the damage was done, he added, because trust was broken. He said Catastrophe Karawan is unusually complicated and that the interruption probably provided valuable testing time. I maintain that had this never happened, we would have hit a major snag in the 11th hour that may have been worse, he said. Mr. Schoonmaker added that he and Ms. Walker were in a good place now. After the work's brief weekend appearance is over, Ms. Walker will be back in possession of a loud calliope in a large wagon. She said that the piece could now be sold, preferably to a museum, and that there were already requests to exhibit it. But the imagination that brought her this far was still at work. I have a fantasy about hauling it across the United States, Ms. Walker said, followed by a parade of interested people while it's tootling away.